Chapter 10 of Spacehounds of IPC by E. Doc Smith. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Spacehounds of IPC. Chapter 10 Among Friends at Last. The time for landing of the Sirius was drawing near, and the castaways upon Ganymede had donned their only suits of earthly clothing, instead of the makeshifts of moleskin, canvas, and leather they had been wearing so long. Thorns and underbrush had pierced and torn their once natty outing costumes, and sparks and flying drops of molten metal from Stephen's first crude forges had burned in them many gaping holes. "I did the best I could with them, Steve, but they look pretty crummy." Nadia wrinkled her nose as she studied the anything-but-invisible seams, darns, and staring patches everywhere so evident, both in her own apparel of grey silk and in the heavy whipcord clothing of her companion. "You did a great job, considering what you had to work with," he reassured her. "Besides, who cares about a few patches? I feel a lot more civilized in my own clothes, don't you?" "Well, yes," she admitted. "They're silk anyway, even if they don't look like much, and I'm just reveling in the feel of them next to me after the horrible, rough, scratchy things I've been wearing. See anything yet?" "Not yet." Stevens had been scanning the heavens with a pair of binoculars. "That doesn't mean much, though, as they'll be just about in the sun, and they'll be coming like a scared dog. Might as well put away these glasses. We probably won't be able to see them until they're right on top of us." "What shall we take with us?" "Don't know. Nothing, probably, since they must have a campaign already mapped out. I'd like to salvage a lot of this junk, but I'm afraid we won't be able to. I'm going to take my bow and arrows, though, aren't you?" "Absolutely. That's one thing that's better than anything I ever had on Earth. This bow of mine is perfect." "There they are. 3 rousing cheers. Say, but that old hulk looks good to me." "Doesn't she, though?" cried Nadia, vibrant with excitement. "You know, Steve, I've hardly dared really to believe it until this very minute. Oh, look! What's that?" The Sirius had stopped in mid-air, and they could see, far in the distance, the tiny sphere of the Jovians, rushing to the attack. "Oh, how horrible!" cried the girl, her voice breaking. "I'm afraid, Steve." "You needn't be, Ace. I've told you they won't go off half-cocked as long as Westfall is on the job. They're ready for anything, or they wouldn't be here. But just the same, I wish that they had that titanium mirror and a couple of those bombs." In a moment more, the Jovian plane of force was launched. The powerful ray screens flared into white-hot, sparkling defense, and the battle was on. Held spellbound as the castaways were by that spectacular duel, yet Stephen's trained mind warned him of the perils of their position. "Grab your bow, and we'll beat it." And he rapidly led her away from the steel structures into an open hillside, well away from any projection, tree, or sharp point of rock. "If that keeps up very long, we're going to see some real fireworks, and I don't know whether there will be enough left of our plant here to salvage or not. Everything's grounded, of course, but I don't believe that ordinary grounds will amount to much against what's coming." "What are you talking about?" demanded Nadia. "Look," he replied, pointing, and as he spoke, a terrific bolt of lightning launched itself from the incandescent screen of the Jovian vessel upon their slender ultra-radio tower, which subsided instantly into a confused mass of molten and twisted metal. As the power of the beams was increased, and as the combatants drew nearer and nearer the ground, the lightning display grew ever more violent. Well below the canyon as the warring vessels were, the power plant and penstock did not suffer at all, and only a few discharges struck the Forlorn Hope, discharges which were carried easily to ground by the enormous thickness of her armor. But every prominent object for hundreds of yards below the Hope was literally blasted out of existence. Radio tower, directors and fittings, trees, shrubs, sharp points of rock, all were struck again and again, fused, destroyed, utterly obliterated by the inconceivable energy being dissipated by those impregnable screens of force. Even almost flat upon the ground as the spectators were, each individual hair upon their heads strove fiercely to stand erect, so heavily charged was the very air. Stephen's arm was blue for days, such was Nadia's grip upon it, and she herself could scarcely breathe in that mighty arm's constriction. But each was conscious only of that incredibly violent struggle, of that duel to the death being waged there before their eyes with those frightful weapons hitherto unknown to man. They saw the Sirius triumphant, and Stevens led the dancing girl back into their dwelling of steel. "Danger's all over now. Radio's gone, but we should fret a lot about that. It has done its stuff. We can use the communicators. And now, sweetheart, I'm going to kiss you, for the first time in 7 lifetimes." Locked in each other's arms, they watched the scene until Stevens thought it time to send his message. Then, running hand in hand toward the huge space cruiser, they were snatched apart and drawn up toward the double airlocks of the main entrance. Pressure gradually brought up to normal, they were ushered into the control room, where Nadia glanced around quickly and almost took her father off his feet by her tempestuous rush into his arms. "Oh, Daddy darling, I just knew you'd come along. I haven't seen you for 1,000,000 years," she exclaimed rapturously. "And Bill, too. Wonderful!" as she fervently embraced a young man wearing the uniform of a lieutenant of interplanetary police. "Ouch, Bill, you're breaking all my ribs." "Well, you cracked 3 of mine. Maybe you don't know how husky you are, but you've got a squeeze like a full-grown boa constrictor." He held her off at arm's length and studied her with admiration. "Gee, it's fine to see you again, sis. You're looking great, too. I think I'll bring my girl out here to live. You always were a knockout, but now you're the loveliest thing I ever saw." He made his way through the group surrounding Stevens while Nadia and her father talked earnestly. "I'm Bill Newton. Thanks," he said simply, holding out his hand, which was taken in a bone-crushing grip. "Bring him over here, Bill," Nadia called before Stevens could find a reply. "I don't know how to say anything, Stevens," the officer continued, in embarrassment, as the 2 men turned to obey the summons. "She's a good kid, and we think a lot of her. We'd about given her up. She... Oh, rats, what's the use? You know what I mean. You're there, Stevens, like a—" "Clam it, Ace," Stevens interrupted. "I get you, to 19 decimals. And you don't half know just what a good kid she really is. She's the reason we're here. We were down pretty close to bedrock for a while. She stood up when I wilted. She's got everything. She—" "Clam it yourself, Steve. Don't believe a word of it, Dad and Bill." "Wilt?" Nadia's voice dripped scorn. "Why, he did—" "Please." Newton's voice was somewhat husky as he silenced the clamor of the 3 young people, all talking at once. "I will not embarrass you further by trying to say something that no words can express. You told me that you would take care of her, and I learned that you have done so." "I did what I could, but most of the credit belongs to her, no matter what she says," Stevens insisted. "Anyway, sir, here she is. Alive, well, and unharmed." And his eyes bore unflinchingly the piercing gaze of the older man, who was reassured and pleased by what he read therein. "One thing I want to say right now, though, that may make you feel like canceling the welcome. I loved Nadia even before the Arcturus was attacked, and since then, coming to know her as I have, the feeling hasn't lessened any. Nadia has already told me all about you two," said her father, "and the welcome stands. And if you could take care of her as well as you have done since you left the Arcturus, I have no doubt of your ability to take care of her for life. We have been examining the work you